Great. Okay. Hello, I'm Rosie Lidington. I'm a lead user researcher and also a designer, and I've been working in user experience and research since 2008. And I'm going to talk to you today about my learnings from a personal project that I've been doing. And this involved observing the experience of founders deep in the foothills of their company ideas, or rather the icy mountain peaks, as we will discover. This is a diagram of how my career in UX has gone so far, with every project following the double diamond and meeting user needs every single time. Just kidding. The reality often, not always, but often looks a lot more like this, and it can be a real struggle to get teams behind an end-to-end process with user research powering innovative product design from the beginning. And one of the most challenging parts of working with organizations as a contract researcher and designer is trying to have influence with senior stakeholders early on, not to mention if I can persuade them to do research in the first place. So this led me to think, why was this so hard? And then I had an idea to lean on my own user research methods to uncover what might be behind this. I wanted to understand this pattern better. So I embarked on a personal mission and went to the roots of the tech industry, a place where stakeholders are incredibly close to their products and ideas. I interviewed startup investors and founders and observed tech incubator seminar sessions. I wanted to understand their mental models when launching products in the very early stages and observe their understanding of UX and innovation. What did they know about it? What did they think about it? Were there ways for me to adapt my approach to meet their needs better? My hypothesis was that founders spend most of their time in the icy mountain peaks, unaware of the path needed to design an innovative product. Only later do they return to the foothills to learn from their target users who had been there all along. And from this study, I identified several user groups, but the majority of the founders I interviewed were primarily focused on designing for themselves. They didn't know how to approach UX or how to generate truly innovative, user-centered designs. They spent a lot of time working with developers, building their product in code. They took the product to market. It didn't resonate with users. They began a journey of understanding and learning about UX. The overarching theme was that this group lacked the experience to know how to build effective user-centered products, and it was a painful learning curve for them. This is a diagram of what happens with the Dunning-Kruger effect, which describes how individuals with limited knowledge overestimate their abilities for success. And this model correlated with the journey I had observed among many startup founders. And this is something I've had observed elsewhere in the industry. It's not unique to startup founders. It's embedded in tech culture. Lean startup and failing fast have been mantras companies live by. But at the coalface of startup creation, this can sometimes lead to failing monumentally, where millions of pounds or dollars are lost in tech ventures. I saw an overwhelming need to move to a new approach at the roots of the industry. The startup community just doesn't talk enough about the power of strategic discovery research for true innovation. Another key thing I observed was that once ready, these founders did want to learn, but they just didn't know where to start or where to look. So I realized I needed to shift my approach to move from what the research is to why it matters, so that I could influence stakeholders. And maybe I could learn something from teaching methods. The times where I have had more impact with stakeholders and teams have been when I've described my process and the rationale for my approach before embarking on it. Providing guided structure for stakeholders to learn why user research is important rather than just talking through the findings. My learnings showed me that some stakeholders do want to learn new skills to have success with their products. Early on in the journey, however, they're often not open to learning about it, and trying to teach at this point is counterproductive. It will likely have the opposite effect. So this led me to understand how to spot the opportunities where it is possible to show the benefits and power of user research. When they're ready, providing them with structure to do so often has greater impact. So on my discovery, I found this inspiring advice from an article by Karen Green from Mappen. In it, she explains that to be an effective teacher, you need to imagine yourself as a maze builder, structuring lessons with goals in mind, and including exploratory opportunities for your students. She describes using teaching methods that focus on guided inquiry, allowing participants to learn by being challenged enough so that it's engaging, but also gives them the freedom to own their understanding. So taking these learnings, I'm now in the process of developing a set of structured materials to guide teams and stakeholders through the approach of each stage of the research and design process. Another thing I observed was that the founder user group really want to have input into the design process. And it's part of why they wanted to embark on their journey in the first place. In some recent workshops, this has had impact because it allowed them to get their ideas down on paper and when tested, create even stronger products. So the key things I've learned on my foothills journey, my own personal foothills journey, are that founder stakeholders often don't know enough about user research and product design to utilize it well. And I believe that we can learn from this. And failing fast is misunderstood and sometimes leads founder stakeholders to fail monumentally. When ready, founder stakeholders are open to learning. They just don't know where to start. And giving certain stakeholders structure to learn at the right points allows them to engage with user research more effectively. So thank you for listening to my lightning talk. It's been a pleasure to share these results with you. If you'd like to connect with me, you can go to my website or find me on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much, Rosie. That was really interesting. I loved seeing the different user groups, especially given you focused on like startups and with the different founder user groups. While we wait for any questions, is there a way to like remove the old questions? Oh yeah, I'll just do
I
dismiss.
think I might
Sorry.
need to stop sharing my screen to see
Yeah,
the
that's totally
slide.
okay. Yeah. I've dismissed two questions. I'm really sorry, but feel free to reach out to Navdeep directly. I'm sure she would be happy to answer. Yeah, so Rosie, getting back to yours, while we wait for any questions, I'll just ask you a quick one. You mentioned the founder user group, one of them, the first one, which was the high confidence one. Did you experience any extra resistance, especially if they had really high confidence in what they were doing and no experience in user research? And how did you overcome the resistance or challenge when it came to getting buy-in?
Um, well, so yes, I did. I experienced a lot of resistance to user research, and actually, what I've observed is that they weren't at the point where they're ready to learn about it, and so that's kind of that was my key learning really, from that response was that they need to almost go on their own journey to be enlightened about UX. And I think somebody coming in from the side, it doesn't matter how much experience you've got, it doesn't matter what you say, really. It doesn't have an impact because they're in this very particular mindset. So there's things that you could do, and what I'm learning at the moment, because I'm on my own journey with this, is that they like to have structure and they like to learn. They want to learn in particular ways, but they want to have a lot of control, and they almost want to do all of the design themselves and the research themselves in a way. And so yeah, and one thing that one user said to me was that UX was the least of their priorities. But if there was a framework that they could use to understand it, because it was a complex topic, that would help. That would maybe open them up to a journey of learning a bit earlier, perhaps.
I guess I think it's really honest of you to just say that, you can't reach everyone and we can't convert everyone. And yeah, I totally agree with that. And I guess to an extent they need to like learn by things not going well, maybe, or maybe they just keep getting lucky. Or we try to learn to convey the language of risk, which is what we often say, right? Not doing research is like risky. We have
Yeah,
two questions. I'll let you pick one question. I don't think we have time for both.
I can't actually see the
Oh, you
question.
can't see the question.
Sorry,
Okay,
I
no
don't know
worries.
why.
Let me do my
Um,
best to try and select an interesting question.
oh, okay, they're in the Q&A. Sorry, I'm looking at the chat.
Oh, now
Uh,
we have one more question. We didn't answer Thiba's question from last time, so I'm not doing favoritism. I'm going to choose Thiba's question this time to just be a little bit impartial in a way, and then we'll see if we have time for more. So, what misconceptions do stakeholders typically have about user research? Could you share an example of how you successfully communicated the results of user research to influence key decisions? It's a really good question.
so one big misconception was they were, this is just one finding, but they were going out and speaking to like 50 users, and they were just noting it all down in notes, here, there, and everywhere. And they thought that was giving them insight. And it was to some extent, but it wasn't leading them anywhere. It wasn't getting them anywhere. It was they were just burning a lot of their time having short conversations with 50 potential users. Um, so it was things like that that made me realize that there's a framework that could be developed for this particular user group. And I haven't developed that yet. I haven't created that yet. But I have in sessions with certain founders that I've been working with, I've been using the beginning of workshops to kind of teach and train methods. And the reason why we're doing it, it has to be explained very much more clearly than it would if you were in a with a group of people who, group of user researchers, for example. So it's just kind of you constantly having to explain why you're doing it, and why you're doing everything, because otherwise they will just say, no, we're not going to do that. So it's things like that. I can't share anything, unfortunately, because it's all confidential client things that I'm working on. But yeah, I've tried to kind of illustrate that in the lightning talk slide.
Thank you. That makes sense. And I guess some of these types of user groups, well, they would also be the ones who think they are their own users or their friends are their own users, I
Yeah,
guess. So
yeah.
it would be an interesting, yeah, it's interesting journey you went through. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think it would be a good one to, go deeper into sometime, more than a lightning talk, I guess. But yeah, thanks. So we